Simultaneous translation facilities for our session this evening. Does dim cyfieithu ar y pryd gyda ni. Ond mae croeso I chi gyfrannu cwestiynau yn y Gymraeg. You are more than welcome to submit your questions, queries in Welsh, and we will translate as we go along. And I will be presenting bilingually, a mi fydda I yn cyflwyno'n ddwyieithog. Mae gyda ni poll. We do have a poll. If you look at the bottom of your screen, if your screen is the same as mine, it's come up now in the middle. So if you can take a few moments to answer that question. Os allwch chi gymryd ychydig eiliadau I ateb y cwestiwn na. Teleri, ydyn ni'n dod nôl i'r cwestiwn ar diwedd y sesiwn? Are we coming back, revisiting the question at the end of the session?
Yes, we are.
Wonderful. So you'll get to answer again at the end. So I'll wait for the numbers to increase. And if you do have any questions, as has already been pointed out, as attendees, you have been muted, but please use the Q&A section, again, available in the middle of your screen at the bottom, to post any questions that you might have for the panel. Please defnyddiwch y Q&A ar y gwylod fyna I holi unrhyw gwestiynau i'r panel. Ni'n gobeithio bydd ychydig amser dyn ni ar diwedd y sesiwn I edrych trwy'r cwestiynau a ymateb neu cynnig ymateb I rhai ohonyn nhw. We will have a slot at the end of the session to revisit all the questions that you've asked during the session and hopefully provide you with some answers. Just I gyflwyno'n hunan, Hazel yw'n enw I, a dwi'n gweithio I Cymdeithas Mudiadau Gwirfoddol Ceredigion. My name's Hazel and I work for the Ceredigion Association of Voluntary Organisations. And on your screen, you can see members of the Ceredigion panel of experts that have been supporting community facilities to reopen and dealing with any inquiries about activities and community facilities in Ceredigion. Mae'r sawl chi'n gallu gweld ar y sgrin yn aelodau o panel Ceredigion, panel o arbenigwyr sydd wedi bod yn ymateb I cwestiynau ynglyn â Ailagor adeiladau cymunedol, a hefyd ailddechrau, ailgychwyn unrhyw gweithgareddau. Fel is-grŵp o bwrdd gwasanaethau lleol Ceredigion, we've been set up as a subgroup of the Ceredigion Public Services Board, and we have been meeting on a weekly basis to deal with questions and inquiries that have come through, and as well to respond to some risk assessments that have come through to us as well. So please use us, and if you do have any queries or questions, or if you do want us to look over anything, then please contact the CAVO team, and then we will discuss with members of the panel. I'm sure Teleri or Cheska will put up our contact details in the chat column, so you all attendees can see the details. Please defnyddiwch ni, cysylltwch os bod gyda chi unrhyw ymoliadau, a mae Teleri wedi rhoi ymanylion cyswllt lan yn y colofn chat. Felly nawn ni gychwyn gyda neges o prif weithredwr Cyngor Sir Ceredigion ar ran grŵp trefen rheoli aer. We'll kick off with a message from Avion Evans, the Chief Executive of Ceredigion County Council, on behalf of Ceredigion Gold Command. And I think, Kit, you are going to do the technical bit. Gobeithio bydd y technoleg yn gweithio I ni.
Helo, Avion Evans ydw I, a fi yw Prif Weithredwr Cyngor Sir Ceredigion.
I'm Adrian Evans and I'm the Chief Executive of Ceredigion County Council. I ddechrau, gai ddiolch I chi yn gwbl ddiffiant am bopeth I chi wedi wneud yn ystod yr argyfwng yma. Fel unigolion, fel arweinwyr cymunedau chi, a fel trigolion Ceredigion I hunain. Oni bai bod ni wedi cydweithio mor dda gyn ni wedi wneud hyd yma, bydde sefyllfa ni yn sylweddol wath na beth yw I. We can celebrate without any doubt the work that we've done collectively. And the thanks has to go to you individually for everything that you've done to make sure we have suppressed this virus and kept it at bay as best we can in Ceredigion. Unfortunately, this crisis isn't over. This virus hasn't gone away. If anything, it's worse now than it's been since the beginning of the pandemic here in Ceredigion. Mae'n niferoedd ni wedi cynyddu'n sylweddol iawn yn ystod mis Tachwedd. Ni wedi dwblu mewn llai na 2 wythnos. A mae hynny'n dangos yn glir I fi bod y feirws yma yn ystod y misoedd nesaf yn mynd I fod yn beryglus iawn I drigolion Ceredigion. Mae'r penderfyniad mae Llywodraeth wedi wneud I ganiatáu ni I ddefnyddio'n asedau I Ailagor yn neuaddau a beth bynnag arall ar draws y sir a I ganiatáu lan I 15 o bobl i'w ddefnyddio nhw yn arwydd bod na rhywfaint o hyder yn perthyn i'r penderfyniadau yma sydd wedi cael ei wneud ar lefel genedlaethol. Ond yn anffodus, dyn nhw ddim yn dod heb I risgiau. The decisions by government to allow us to open up our community assets and allow up to 15 people to congregate in those facilities doesn't come without its risk. We are particularly concerned at the moment that this virus is really prevalent in our communities. It's doubled in November in numbers, and that comes at quite a cost, both to individuals, families within our communities, and we have to take this very seriously. So, in moving forward, you will ultimately be decision makers on whether we use these facilities or not. And in doing so, I know what the pressure is like to have to make difficult decisions, and the ability to use this forum is going to be absolutely crucial to help you make those decisions, those informed decisions very carefully. Wrth ddefnyddio'r fforwm yma, byddwch chi'n cael y gefnogaeth proffesiynol sydd gyda ni o fewn y sir. A mae gwir angen I chi ddefnyddio nhw, achos pan byddwch chi'n neud y penderfyniadau yma, beth bynnag fydd eich penderfyniadau chi, fe fydd gan bobl barn gwahanol ar beth I chi'n wneud, ar sail y penderfyniadau chi wedi wneud. Ac os ydych chi wedi gallu wneud gyda'r gefnogaeth oddi wrtho ni, gorau gyd yw hynny mwyn helpu chi ddod i'ch penderfyniadau yn y pen draw. Mae 'na oleuni ar ddiwedd y twnnel, mae'r vaccine maen nhw'n siarad amdano, mae fe ar y ffordd. Ond y broblem fydd gyda ni, fyddwn ni ddim yn gallu sicrhau bod bob un person ar draws y wlad wedi derbyn y vaccine yma am sawl mis eto. Ac felly mae'r cyfnod yma, dyma'r cyfnod gweitha oll, achos I ni bron y bod wedi llwyddo I ddod allan pen draw yr argyfwng. Ond mae'n penderfyniadau ni yn y misoedd nesaf yn mynd I fod yn allweddol bwysig os ydyn ni wirioneddol yn mynd I gadw niferoedd ni lawr yng Ngheredigion. These next few months are critical. If we make the wrong decisions in the next 3-4 months, then it could be quite catastrophic for the residents of Ceredigion. There is light at the end of the tunnel. These vaccines are coming, but it's going to take us until April, May before we've vaccinated everybody. And this virus is going to fight hard between now and then. And that vaccine, is hopefully going to save the situation and get us back to some sort of normality. But we've got to tread very, very carefully before we make any decisions that could give this virus the window of opportunity it wants to take more lives from Ceredigion. We've already lost too many. One is too much. And so when you take these decisions moving forward, ask yourselves, can you guarantee this is a COVID-free zone? And if the answer to that is no, then you need to make difficult, bold and strong decisions to say it's just not safe to open them. Fe fyddwn ni ma'ch cefnogi chi, cant a cant, fe fydd yn llinellau ffoni ar agor I chi am yr fforwm yma I roi'r gefnogaeth pellach na I chi. byddwch chi ddim ar ben eich hunain yn gwneud y penderfyniadau, ond gymawr obeithio bod y cryfder gyda chi i aros yn gryf i wneud y penderfyniadau cywir am y resymau cywir. Felly gobeithio byddwch chi'n gweld bydd yn yr sesiwn yma heno, a cofiwch cysylltu gyda ni unrhyw bryd os ydych chi sy'n mwy o wybodaeth neu gefnogaeth. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you again for your presence this evening. You are leaders in your own communities. I just hope that we're able to provide you with the support networks that you need to make these strong, hard decisions and the right ones for the citizens of Ceredigion. Dymuniadau gorau chi, a gobeithio mwyn chi mwynhau y cyfarfod heno. Diolch yn fawr.
Teleri has shared a useful link in the chat column to some online resources that, as a panel, we've pulled together. And they're available on the Ceredigion County Council website. And it includes a risk assessment template, guidance, and as well, importantly, a checklist for those community facilities who have decided to remain closed, because there are a number in Ceredigion that have taken that decision. Teleri wedi rhannu link I adnoddau defnyddiol. Mae'r panel hyn wedi tynnu ynghyd sydd ar gael ar gwefan Cyngor Sir Ceredigion. Felly defnyddiwch yr adnoddau sydd ar gael. Mae yna templed asesu risg na. Mae yna rester o bethau ystyried os bod chi'n cadwch adeilad ar gau. Nifer o lleoliadau wedi penderfynu wneud hynny. A hefyd mae'r cynllawiau diweddara lanna hefyd. O'n i am gweud ychydig neu rhannu rhai'r prif bwyntiau o'r cynllawiau diweddara. I mentioned that on that link, we also have a copy of the latest guidance, the revised guidance that have been produced by WCVA with the support of a national panel. And I just wanted to draw your attention really to a few key points that are covered in those revised guidance, which have been pulled together after the fire break came to an end. Mae'r cynllawiau hyn wedi cael eu diweddaru wedi i'r cyfnod atal byr dod I ben. As Eifion mentioned in his presentation, up to 15 people are now allowed to meet indoors for organised activities, if space permits. And I think that's a really important consideration. But the message, as Eifion mentioned, it can't have gone beyond anybody's notice that the figures really are moving in the wrong direction in Ceredigion. Mae'r sefyllfa yn Ceredigion wedi newid, ac bod lan hyd at 15 o bobl yn gallu nawr cwrdd tu fewn ar gyfer y gweithgareddau sydd wedi cael eu trefnu. Mae'r sefyllfa yng Ceredigion wedi newid, a ni dal yn gofyn I bobl I ystyried cwrdd ar-lein, os bod na dal yn bosib, neu cwrdd tu allan yn y gaea, dyw hwnna ddim yn gymaint o opsiwn. Neu ystyried a odi'r gweithgaredd yn hanfodol, ac os I bod I gadw fe'n fach ac yn fyr. So bod cyn lleied o chi ac sy'n bosib yn cwrdd, dyw'r 15 ddim yn targed, a bod chi'n cadw'r cyfarfod neu'r gweithgaredd mor fyr ac sy'n bosib. Because the situation in Ceredigion has changed, because the numbers are increasing, we're still asking people to continue to meet or run their activities virtually. If that's still working for you, don't change it. To consider whether it is possible to meet outside. I know it's not ideal in the winter months, but it can still be considered in some instances. And if your activity is essential and you still want to bring people together indoors, as Eifion was saying, in a COVID-safe environment, then we're asking people to keep it small in numbers and to keep it brief. because the space itself might limit the number of people that can come together. As we were saying, 15 isn't a target. It is up to 15, but it's still essential that we continue to physically distance, wear face coverings when we're indoors in a public space, and to maintain really good hand hygiene. Mae fe dal yn hanfodol bod ni'n cadw'r pellter corfforol na, a mae hwnna yn mynd i gael effaith ar y nifer o bobl all dod ynghyd. Bod ni'n defnyddio gorchuddion wyneb pan ni'n ni tu fewn mewn adeiladau, a bod glendid dwylo hefyd, mae cyfan na dal yn hanfodol, dal yn holl bwysig. Gwybodaeth, for information, the number, the 15, doesn't include anybody who's organising that activity or children. But again, the space puts a cap on numbers. Dyw'r 15 ddim yn cynnwys plant o dan 11 na trefnwyr y gweithgaredd. Ond wrth gwrs mae'r lle yn mynd i fod yn mynd i cael effaith ar y nifer o bobl sydd yn gallu dod ynghyd. I ni gweud dim alcohol, a hefyd i bidio a defnyddio na rhannu bwyd os yn bosib, a hefyd os bod na bwyd, gwasanaeth bwrdd yn unig sydd i fod o fewn adeiladau. It's no alcohol, and again, we would discourage food at the moment, or especially the sharing of food. But if food is necessary, then it's table service only, as is being done in restaurants and cafes. And I just wanted to finally mention that again, test, trace and protect is still vitally important. Mae fe dal yn bwysig ofnadw bod ni dal yn dilyn y system profi olrhain a diogelu, a bod gyda ni rester o bobl sy'n mynychu gweithgareddau. Really, really important that we do keep a register of those who are taking part in any activities, and that we have an up-to-date contact list of anybody who happens to be involved. So it's still very, very important that we keep those details for the test, trace and protect system. Felly eto, os bod gyda unrhyw gwestiynau, please defnyddiwch y Q&A neu'r chat. Again, if you do have any questions, please pop them up in the Q&A function or the chat column, and we'll get to them a little bit later on this evening. But before we move to any questions that you might have, cyn I ni symud i'r cwestiynau, Glynis has joined us this evening to talk through, or to start the discussion about the May elections and the impact that will have on polling stations, and some of the things that we need to consider. Glynis wedi ymuno ni heno I drafod etholiadau mis Mai a gorsafod pleidleisio. May seems like such a long time away, but if we're looking at elections in this kind of environment, under these conditions, then we need to start the planning early. Felly Glynis, os bych chi eisiau gweud ychydig o eiriau ynglyn â'r trefniadau a'r beth sy'n cael ei ystyried ar hyn o bryd, if you'd like to say a few words about what's being considered at the moment. Oh, sorry Glynis, ti ar mute.
Right, okay. Diolch yn fawr iawn. Chi'n clywed fi nawr? Yeah?
Great, fantastic.
Diolch yn fawr Hazel, a diolch am croesawu fi yma heno i'r cyfarfod, eich cyfarfod chi. Dim ond I rhoi braslun o beth sy'n ymlaen gyda ni yn y gwasanaeth etholiadol. Fel chi'n gwybod, mae da ni ddwy etholiad ar y 6 o Fai blwyddyn nesaf, sef Police and Crime Commissioner ac hefyd yr etholiad Senedd. ar hyn o bryd, yn bendant gallwn ni ddweud bod yr un Police and Crime yn mynd ymlaen ar y 6ed. Ar hyn o bryd mae yna sgwrsiau falle beth bydd yn digwydd ynglyn â Senedd, ynglyn â'r beth sy'n digwydd ynglyn â'r Covid, ond ar hyn o bryd mae popeth yn mynd ymlaen. Felly mae 2 etholiad gyda ni ar y 6ed o Fai blwyddyn nesaf, bendant ar hyn o bryd. Felly mae'r trefniadau yn mynd ar ei blaen, ac peth mwyaf pwysig sydd gyda ni i wneud siŵr bod pethau'n cael ei rhoi yn ei lle. Felly, i'r rhai o chi, chi'n gwybod ni'n llogi'r neuaddau neu festri neu gwahanol canolfannau ar hyd y sir i ddefnyddio nhw fel gorsafoedd pleidleisio. Felly, cyn bo hir, byddwn ni yn cysylltu â chi i bwcio'r gorsafoedd pleidleisio. We'll be contacting you soon to book the polling stations. But of course, there are so many things to consider this time when booking, as in what is expected of a polling station, not only as in what is expected usually and what we've got to adhere to, but what is expected as in COVID-19. Therefore, for example, we're looking at which polling stations got an entrance and in access way in and way out. Obviously, I don't need to do much of a survey on that, as I know majority don't have that facility, unfortunately, and it's not expected. But we have to look into it and consider what is available, and maybe possibility of introducing some of the facilities then as in additional facilities, as in giving access to the polling stations, and considering that aren't so many people supposed to be in that building at the same time. Therefore, there will be additional information when we've been contacting these polling stations, not only the booking form as usual, simple letter, booking form, how long we want it, who's the key holder, who are we to pay and everything, but there'll be a slight difference, as in do we need a risk assessment completed. We will be using most probably the one that has already been set up by CAVO, and which is already on our website, on the council's website. What we don't want to do, and the reason I have got in touch with CAVO was I didn't want to duplicate the amount of work that everybody's doing already, and co-working with other services within the authority, because there's nothing worse than duplication. So it's communicating and hopefully sharing the information that is required. Yeah, so we've got a lot to think about and a lot to put in place, but most importantly is the safety and safety of the staff that will be working in these polling stations on the polling day, and also safety of other people that will be coming into the building. That is the paramount importance for us. Any questions?
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Glynis. Thank you, Glynis. Again, any questions, please add them to the chat column of the Q&A column. O'n i'n awyddus iawn i sicrhau bod ni'n cael y trafodaeth yma yn eitha cynnar, neu bod ni'n dechrau ystyried yn gynnar. We were very, very keen to make sure that we gave you the heads up, actually, because many of you will be involved or know of people who are involved in the polling stations. We want to start the planning now, and as Glynis was saying, and as we've said all along, it's really important that we look at 2 risk assessments, one for the building and one for the activity. And although the details around the need for considerations around the activity are ongoing, we do have a risk assessment template for the building, so that's something that we could be doing now. So if you haven't already done so, then it might be worth considering. Os na bo chi isios wedi wneud asesiad risg o'r adeilad, Felly bod e'n werth i ystyried na nawr. Ni'n gwybod bod eisiau ail asesiad risg ar gyfer y gweithgaredd, a mae hwnna'n cael ei ystyried ar hyn o bryd, ond mae'r asesiad risg ar gyfer yr adeilad yn rhywbeth allwn ni wneud nawr, a mae yna template ar gael ar y wefan. Ond mae fe'n bwysig bod ni'n cychwyn ar y trafodaeth hyn a dechrau ystyried beth fydd ei angen. Really important that we consider what's needed and start the planning now. A un o'r pethau nes ti weid pan wnaethon ni gwrdd Glynnes, oedd bod, felly fyddwn ni'n fwy awyddus, bod bobl yn cofrestru i pleidleisio trwy'r post. We'll probably be encouraging more people to really get a postal vote. So the logistics of polling stations are slightly easier.
Yeah, yes, if I'd like to reiterate what Hazel's just said there. Yes, obviously postal votes is quite more attractive for this election in May than it has been previously. We had an increase last year of well, over 3,000 increase on what we have already issued previous years with postal votes. So it is more attractive, and more people are taking the opportunity of having a vote by a postal vote. Therefore, I can only emphasize there that if you haven't got a postal vote and you're interested in having a postal vote, to request one from us, from the electoral services in the authority council. Yes, and the website, the email address for that is electoralservices@ceredigion.gov.uk, and you can just request an application from us, or you can go on the .gov website and request one from the site there, postal vote application. And if you need any further information on that, you can email us.
Fi'n gweld bod ni ambell i gwestiwn. I can see that we've got a couple of questions. Melinda's asking, mentioning that the hall in Fellinfach is closed at the moment. And if it's still closed, or decision is taken to remain closed, then will there be any support from the local authority to do the risk assessment? And I think the message is, because we've got the template, and Melinda, we can have a discussion with you offline tomorrow at some point. Then I think, because you, as a committee, you know the building far better than any of us. So I'd really encourage you, bydden ni'n annog chi falle I wneud y darna o waith yn gynta, a wedyn bydden ni'n fwy na hapus I edrych drosto fe, a I gefnogi gyda unrhyw beth yn benodol I chi isse unrhyw fath o fewnbod arno fe. You know the space far better than we do as a committee. So I'd urge you to maybe draft a risk assessment first, and attempt to get it completed again, the sooner the better. So then we would be more than happy to make any comments on the draft or help you with any particular areas that you might be unsure of. And again, the earlier you do that, the better, because what we don't want. Glynnes, how many polling stations do we have? Faint sydd gyda ni?
There's about approximately 74 polling stations. So
we don't really want 70 plus risk assessments coming the week before.
Well, sorry, Hazel. Yes, that's why we're emphasising it is 74, and hopefully that number will stay the same. But this is quite how can I explain? It's quite difficult. We will be booking the whole 74, and we will want 74 risk assessments completed and returned. Obviously, if we can help by any way, we can. Obviously, we can't come out. We are restricted to what we are able to do. But it's the people, the key holders, the caretakers. They're the best people who can tell us what is possible and what is not possible within their the facilities they've got within the hall or the vestry or community centres. Therefore, we do ask, but obviously, as Hazel says, if you need help, I do realise as well, because I'm quite I do know who the key holders and caretakers and who's responsible for these buildings, and this is not an easy task. It's not going to be easy for anybody to complete, you know, and we do understand that most probably people would want assistance, and that's why we are starting so early. We want to get the ball rolling, and we would like to have this task finished by January, to be honest with you, because Welsh Government are already giving us targets to complete information that they want as well. So yes, it is something that we will be starting soon. And if you do want help, we can, you know, we are here to help.
Yeah, sooner the better. Cyntaf gyd gorau gyd, felly allwn ni rhoi'r amser I gefnogi wedyn, so we can then find the time to support. And so Melinda, we will be in touch. And I'm just wondering, Glynis and the rest of the panel, we have suggested that we might run a couple of sessions just dedicated to the election and polling stations, which might be helpful. And I'm just wondering whether it might be useful just to have one session just focused on the risk assessment process itself. Just to go through some of the areas, some of the although we've done some of that work, it might be worth revisiting that.
Yeah, that'd be great if we could. I don't know if what's the schedule for your meetings before Christmas. Maybe it'd be a good idea to have a session before Christmas. Going through the form, or giving examples of how to complete the form.
Yeah,
I think that would be a big help, you know, because some people aren't familiar with seeing these forms and the risk assessment. You know, it's not easy. And how do you assess and how do you mark, you know, grade, and how do you complete it. So people do need help, and we do understand that. I am concerned about that, and I don't want people to panic and worry how they're going to do it, and maybe not answer us because they're not able to complete it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Felly bydd werth I ni gyda'r session. It's probably useful for us to run a session just focused on the risk assessment template and what we, especially in terms of the election, what we would want to look out for. Couple of questions as well, which are kind of related. Mae'n couple of cwestiynau sy'n gysylltiedig. Cwestiwn anodd iawn o Glenys, very difficult question from Glenys, asking whether we know how many community centres have opened across the county, sawl neuadd sydd wedi agor ar draws y sir. And I think it's fair to say, isn't it, panel, that we haven't got a definitive number. We are keeping a list, a register of those village halls that obviously have contacted us with a risk assessment form to double check or to let us know that they've reopened. And we're also keeping a running list of community centres, village halls that we know of that have informed us that they will be remaining closed for the foreseeable future. Or ones that we have picked up messages from that have said that they're remaining closed. So we've got two separate lists, not definitive. It's not covering all the spaces in Ceredigion, but we would welcome any feedback from any of you that are running community facilities to let us know on which list you would want to be added onto. But it links into Gerwyn's question about hall committees that have made the decision to remain closed. Mae fe'n gysylltiedig â cwestiwn Gerwyn ynglyn â pwyllgorau neuaddau sydd wedi wneud y penderfyniad I gadw ar gau. But we do know that some community centres and village halls have made the decision to remain closed for most community activities, but have done their risk assessment so that they can reopen if they need to be used in an emergency as a rest centre, or for blood donations. The election polling station could come under that category. So you might choose to reopen for a few activities only. And one of the other things that we will be considering over the next few days is whether we need additional community space for the vaccination programmes. So again, we might be asking community centres and village halls whether they're ready and able to reopen for that purpose. So you might not be open for general community activity, and you may have made that decision as a committee for numerous reasons, which is absolutely fine. But you might want to reopen for specific one-off activities or specific activities. Mae nifer o neaddau a Canolfannau Cymunedol wedi wneud y penderfyniad I agor ar gyfer gweithgareddau penodol yn unig, fel lle ar gyfer mewn argyfwng, neu ar gyfer rhoi gwad, neu ni yn mynd I fod yn ystyried dros y dyddiau a'r wythnosau nesaf, a fydd y lle ychwanegol arno ni ar gyfer y rhaglen vaccination. Felly mae nifer o neuaddau wedi wneud y penderfyniad na yn barod. So there's a message from Linda. We'll get in touch with Linda again to catch up with Linda. Yeah, and Rodri, yes, so you've taken your Aberaeron Memorial Hall is one of those centres that has taken that decision. Some have said until the new year where the situation will be reviewed. Some have stated that they'll be reviewing in the spring. So yes, May might be, we might see a few more venues open by May. Os na unrhyw gwestiynau eraill, any other questions?
We did have a question early on, but don't know if Aidan want to answer it. It's from Rodri Abreiron. Are you able to clarify the question regarding heating systems, not portable, that make use of the fans to circulate air? So going back to the regulations and what we said at the beginning session.
Eifion, yn hapus I ymateb, so bod pawb yn clywed
Yeah.
Diolch, thank you.
Mae fe lawr i'r asesiad risg mewn ffordd. Mae fe'n un caled oherwydd yr un broblem yn codi ynglyn â hynna a'r rhesymau pam bod canu ddim yn cael digwydd mewn llefydd fel hyn a bod yr awyr yn symud o amgylch lle caeedig. It's an interesting question because it does raise the prospect of air moving around an enclosed space and increasing the risk of transmission between people within that space, as opposed to the idea of opening windows and doors, etc., in order to have fresh air in, which gives new movement of air through a space or through a building. Unfortunately,
Oh, sorry, Eifion, ni wedi colli di fyna. We lost you there for a bit, Eifion. Are you back with us?
Sorry, yes, I cut out there for some reason. I don't know how far I got.
It was about the circulation of air and you know, they're saying about fresh air as well, isn't it? We need so heaters. It's about, yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? The fan heaters.
Yes, that's the issue really. It's you're recirculating air across and moving air which potentially could be contaminated over to other people within the space. It may well be that you would want to look at alternative means of heating for the use of those spaces rather than fan-assisted sort of heater.
For example, if you're putting in place
for that period.
Portable like oil heaters or something like that, you need to add that assessment as well, wouldn't you? Or even heating the room before the people arrive and then turning the heating off whilst they're in the room.
Yeah, that's another option as well, isn't it, Donna? And it's a good opportunity, actually. Mae fe'n gyfle da I atgoffa pawb bod na grantiau ar gael. There are grants available to support. So if you do need to think about maybe not a wholesale change of a massive heating system, but if you do need a few additional oil heaters to replace any fan heaters, then there are grant schemes available. So again, contact CAFO and we'll point you in the right direction and share that information with the panel. But because of the complexities, Avion and Donna, it's probably best not to consider fan heaters at the moment because of the recirculation of air. So if the droplets or if the infection is in the room, then what you're doing is circulating that throughout the room.
With this you know, the ventilation considerations are up there just as important as your hands, face and space.
Yeah.
And you know, another thing about the ventilation is perhaps when you do have your small group in that room is opening the windows up wide after they've left so that we have an air change. If you've got activities planned, you could speak to those people who are carrying out those activities in your space, in your venue, that warn people it's winter time, we have to keep fresh air running through the building, make sure that you wear a jacket, you bring warm clothes with you. You know, we're not talking about the ideal standard, the gold standard, we're doing our best, we want to keep people safe, and we've got to be met halfway at the same time.
That's another good reason to keep meetings short, isn't it?
Well,
then your meetings will have to be a bit shorter.
It may well encourage it, so it could be a good thing in a roundabout way.
Could be a good thing. Ond mae 'na grantiau ar gael. There are grants available if you do need to make a few tweaks and changes, because messages seem to be that we might be living with this for a while. So we might be looking at slightly longer term adaptations, and so get in touch. Efallai fyddwn ni'n byw gyda y newidiadau hyn am sbel hir. Felly, os bod na newidiadau neu unrhyw beth sy'n cael ei addasu o fewn y neuadd, wedyn cysylltwch, mae yna grantiau ar gael. Unrhyw gwestiynau eraill? Any other questions that we've missed, Teleri?
Yeah, just one more question. They wanted to clarify again on the regulations. You said up to 15 people. Yeah. Does this include all activity? For example, a hall meeting or a birthday party? So what does that 15 people total allow you to do?
All indoor activities. Pob gweithgaredd tu fewn o dan do. But again, what we must ask ourselves is whether it needs to happen. We do need, it's essential that we limit that contact. We limit the number of people that we do interact with face to face. So it is still really, really vitally important that we ask that question, whether it is essential that we get together. Mae fe dal yn bwysig ofnadw, bod unrhyw weithgaredd yn gallu digwydd, mae rhaid i ni ystyried a faint mor hanfodol yw'r gweithgaredd na. Mae fe dal yn bwysig bod ni'n lleihau ein gweithgareddau gyda bobl eraill sydd tu fas i'n cartrefi ni, yn enwedig dros misoedd y gaea. Mae'n anodd, ond mae yna benderfyniadau anodd sydd rhaid cael ei wneud. It is difficult, it is tough, but difficult decisions will continue to need to be made. So it is any activity. But important considerations as well for venues that are open. You know, as Donna was mentioning, you know, circulating air in between activities. You know, you need to leave some space in between activities as well. Mae'n pwysig i gadw amser rhwng gweithgareddau i glanhau, i adael i bobl i adael y gweithgaredd ac i gyrraedd y gweithgaredd nesaf heb bod nhw'n cwrdd. Really important that you keep plenty of time between activities so that you can do the necessary cleaning, so that you can get some fresh air in, so that you can make sure that people don't cross as they leave one activity and join the next activity. So I think, again, back-to-back activities is something that we won't be able to do for a long while. And it is up to 15. Again, the space will determine how many. It could be less than 15, depending on the space, for any activity. And you mentioned children's parties. That wouldn't be considered an organised activity. It has to be something that's organised by a group, a voluntary group, a charity, a club. So it can't be a personal activity that's organised. Unrhyw beth arall fyna?
Eileen, a group yn Holiniad Ailagor, there's a group that was putting pressure on the whole committee to open for exercise classes or other activities. So what advice would the panel give to the whole, and what kind of message do you think the whole should give to the activity?
Oh, it's tough, isn't it? Does anybody else want to chip in? Unrhyw un arall is ymateb i'r cwestiwn na?
We've been working on a risk assessment template for activities as well, haven't we? So it could be something that the whole coordinators could share and ask them to use as a guide. And just to be sort of thoughtful about how many people are there, that, they've got, if they're going to be having to supply things like hand sanitizers, etc., and that when they're carrying out these activities, that they're super vigilant, like we all have to be every day now. So if you think somebody is looking like they might have a fever, they're coughing, etc., like that, you ask them to leave immediately. It's just for everybody to be super vigilant and even more careful than we would have been before now. So also that, they want, if the place is nice and clean when you go in, the people who are holding the activities, you'd like them to keep it as nice and clean as they leave as well, and to be part of this sort of hygiene drive to try and reduce the risk of infection to people in the community as well.
Ac Arwyn, fi'n credu bod yn deg i weid, mi ddyle pawb parchu'r ffaith, mae penderfyniad chi fel pwyllgor yw e. Penderfyniad anodd, ond penderfyniad chi fel pwyllgor yw e. A ni'n ymwybodol o nifer y cymunedau eraill sydd o dan bwysau hefyd i Ailagor. It is a difficult one, Gerwyn, but everybody should respect the decision of the whole committee. Because there are a number of considerations, and I don't think people quite understand the great many considerations that you have to make as a committee before you reopen. And if you haven't got the capacity to make sure that the cleaning process is upheld, if you haven't got the availability to be able to do that, then and make it a COVID safe zone, then the best decision is to remain closed. Os na bod chi'n gallu sicrhau bod yn lle diogel i bobl i cymryd rhan yn gweithgareddau, wedyn chi'n neud y penderfyniad na iawn ar gyfer y gymuned. But if you do want us as a panel to consider any specific requests, or to help with any wording that you might want to share as a committee, then get in touch, let us know. As bo chi eisiau ni cefnogi mewn unrhyw ffordd, wedyn rhowch wybod. Because it's really important that we make the right decisions to protect the wider community. Unrhyw un arall sy'n gweud rhywbeth o'r panel? Anybody else want to add anything as a panel?
Byddwn ni just yn ategu beth ych chi just wedi dweud, Hazel, o ran bod angen i pob pwyllgor fod yn hyderus bod nhw'n gwneud y penderfyniad iawn i'w lleoliad nhw, heb bod nhw'n teimlo o dan bwysau i agor ar gyfer gweithgareddau amrywiol. Felly fel o'ch chi'n sôn, mae fe'n benderfyniad pwysig, ond mae fe'n benderfyniad i chi hefyd. Felly mae eisiau chi fod yn hollol hyderus bod chi'n hapus gyda'r penderfyniad ni, a beth bydden ni'n awgrymu a dweud.
Diolch, Lori. I noticed a question, this might be right up your street, Donna, or maybe Evian, about fogger machines. I must admit, I was quite interested in them at the very beginning. Donna, do you want to say a few words about fogger machines?
Fogger machines shouldn't be used to replace proper cleaning. I mean, the sort of disinfectant, vericidal, sort of chloride-based cleaning is what's most important. I mean, even in the council offices and the schools, etc., we're very careful about using fogging, and it's just used as something additional to having that enhanced cleaning routine that we have to have everywhere now. So be very careful and do not use it instead of thorough cleaning of contact surfaces, you know, your door handles, your light switches, your plastic chairs, etc. You know, not to use it instead of cleaning. That's the most important thing with these fogging machines. They're still relatively new, but at the same time, they have been recognised as something additional to support to sort of deep clean if you fear that perhaps you may have had somebody in your building that was potentially COVID positive, and it's just additional to your thorough cleaning.
Excellent, diolch yn fawr iawn, Donna. Oeddi hwnna'n dod â'r cwestiynau i ben. Does that bring our questions to an end? Again, fel nath Lori sôn yn gynt yn y column, as Lori mentioned previously in the chat column, we are meeting on a weekly basis as a panel. In ni'n cwrdd pob prynawn dimorth. We meet every Tuesday afternoon to consider latest developments nationally and to address any queries or any risk assessment drafts that we are getting through. So please use us. Please send any questions or queries or drafts through so we can have a look through and support you as much as possible. It is difficult and the process of preparing for elections will also be tricky, but you're not on your own. I chi ddim ar ben eich hunain, felly os bod gyda chi unrhyw gwestiynau, unrhyw drafts i chi sy'n ei ystyried, wedyn danfonwch nhw trwyddo i'r panel. I ni ma i'ch cefnogi chi, i ni ma i'ch helpu. A fi'n credu o beth sy'n digwydd gyda nifer o achosion sydd gyda ni yng Ngheredigion ac i ystyried neges Evian Evans ar cychwyn y cyfarfod. Mae fe hyd yn oed yn fwy pwysig nag erioed bod ni nawr yng Ngheredigion yn gwneud pob dim o fewn yn gallu yn cymunedau i gadw bobl yn saff. Just reflecting back on Evian's presentation earlier, with increasing numbers and things changing in Ceredigion, it's more important now than it ever has been that we do absolutely everything that we can to keep people safe, to keep Ceredigion safe. So I'd like to thank you for your time this evening. And if you know of anybody who hasn't been able to join us, then we will be making the recorded link available hopefully by the end of the week if we don't have any technical issues. Diolch am eich amser heno. Mi fyddwn ni'n neud y link ar gael cyn diwedd yr wythnos, a newn ni rhannu hwnna os bod chi'n gwybod am unrhyw un sydd ddim wedi gallu'r ymuno ni. Cadwch mewn cysylltiad. Mi fyddwn ni yn danfon gwybodaeth pellach allan fel mae pethau'n newid, fel mae'r cynllawiau'n newid, a hefyd ar gyfer unrhyw sesiynau yn y dyfodol, yn enwedig yn ymwneud â gorsafodd pleidleisio. Keep in touch. We will be keeping you informed of any changes in legislation or the regulations or any changes in guidance. We will also let you know of any future sessions, particularly that one that Glynis and I were talking about risk assessments for polling stations. Felly diolch eto am eich amser. Thank you again for your time this evening, and take care. Cymerwch ofal. Cyn i chi adael, os na mae pawb wedi gadael yn barod, angofiais i am y cwestiwn. I forgot about the poll. So if you could take a few moments to fill the poll before you disappeared, that would be much appreciated. Diolch yn fawr iawn.